يا علي
يا ساكن بقلبي وعليك يظل نحبي يا بني الأكبر. يا ساكن بقلبي وعليك يظل نحبي يا بني الأكبر.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الأعظم حجة الله ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء. السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته. السلام على من الإجابة تحت كبته. السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي يا سادتي، فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: إن لدم الحسين حرارة في قلوب المؤمنين لا تبرد أبدا. صدق النبي وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. ثانيا، لشفاء المرضى ولقضاء الحوائج ولتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب الأمر. In the tradition which we just narrated after the recitation of the khutbah, which is found in the book Mustadrak al-Wasail, The Holy Prophet of Islam describes the relationship of the mu'mineen in regards to Sayyid al-Shuhada and the event of Ashura, whereby the Prophet says, Inna li-damil Husayn. There are two traditions. One tradition from the Holy Prophet that says, Inna li qatlil Husayn, and one tradition as in Mustadrak al-Wasail, Inna li damil Husayn. Each one has a particular connotation. However, Rasulullah says in regards to the blood that was spilled of Imam al-Husayn, there is a heat within the hearts of the mu'mineen that shall never be extinguished. For this hadith sets for us the motion and the stance of a mu'min in regards to Sayyid al-Shuhada. The grief that we carry in our hearts is a grief that can never subside. It can never happen for a mu'min that one Muharram he is submerged in grief, and in the subsequent year or in the following year he does not feel that grief for Imam al-Husayn. Rather, more than this, Rasulullah says that in regards to the blood of Sayyid al-Shuhada that was spilled on the day of Ashura, when Rasulullah says, إِنَّ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ حَرَارَةً لَا تَبْرُدُوا أَبَدًا. What Rasulullah says, one of the characteristics of a mu'min is that throughout the year, not only throughout the year, but every day of his life, his heart is bleeding for Imam al-Husayn. For the sifat of one of the sifat of the mu'mineen, one of the sifat of the Shia, one of the sifat of the Ansar of the 12th Imam is that they have an absolute strong relationship with Imam al-Husayn. To implement the message of Sayyid al-Shuhada during our daily lives is one aspect of the revolution. However, the other aspect of the revolution is to keep that emotion and that heat, that hamas, that jazbah alive within our hearts. That flame can never be extinguished. Having said this, there are a number of ways in which our grief for Sayyid al-Shuhada is expressed. And there are a number of ways through which the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada is revived year after year. All these mannerisms, all the different ways in which the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada is revived is collectively known as the Sha'air Husayniyah. Sha'air is a word that comes, or the plural of the word in Arabic, from the word sha'ira, which means symbol. So any issue or any matter, any symbol which reminds you or which is attached to the issue of Karbala is known as Sha'air al-Husayniyah. Therefore, when you look at this Husayniyah al-Mubarak or this Imam al-Bargha, for the structure which it is, building, cement, this in itself, because the establishment of the Husayniyah was to revive the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada, this Husayniyah, this Imam Bargha is considered to be a sha'ira from the Sha'air Husayniyah. This Majlis Aza, to sit over here and to give a khutbah or to give a discourse whereby the values of the revolutions of Imam al-Husayn are revived, where the tragedy of Imam al-Husayn is revived. This majlis is known as, or this majlis comes under the title of Sha'air Husayniyah. Similarly, this crying, when we cry over the musibah, the act of crying is to revive the madlumiyah of Sayyid al-Shuhada. It is given the title of Sha'air Husayniyah. The recitation of Marthiyah, the recitation of Nawha, because it brings to life the tragedy and we try and experience the grief of Ahlul Bayt, it is given the title of Sha'air Husayniyah. Similarly, when you go out in the julus, This julus, a procession in itself, where you come out holding banners for Imam al-Hussein. The idea of the procession is that you explain to the entire public who Imam al-Hussein was. You explain to them how he was mercilessly and inhumanely massacred on the plains of Karbala, because it is a field or a form of tabligh, where you are reviving the legacy of Sayyid al-Shuhada. The julus becomes part of the Sha'air Husayniyya. Between brackets, Alam, Jula, Shabih, are these also considered as the Sha'air Husayniyya? Or are these just symbols that are cultural and have no value? When you look into the Quranic term under the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَذَلِكَ مِن تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ, or where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He talks about the Sha'air Allah. Those who revere the Sha'air Allah, they do it because of taqwa from their hearts. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ذَلِكَ مَنْ يُعَظِّمُ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. The word sha'ira, which we said is a singular of the plural word sha'air, we said sha'ira is any symbol. In the Quran, the word sha'ira represents a symbol or an issue or a matter that is attributed or attached with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that thing or that issue reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in another verse of the Quran says, Inna safa wal marwa min sha'air Allah. When you go for Hajj or when you go for Umrah, when you see this mountain Safa and you see this mountain Marwa, you remember the sacrifice of Nabi Ibrahim, you remember the sacrifice of Nabi Ismail, and how his mother ran behind between the deserts looking for water. And then this reminds you of their submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the term sha'ira or sha'air is used to define a symbol or an object that reminds you of Allah. And in the same way, Sha'air al-Husayniyya, any symbol or any issue, anything that reminds you of Imam al-Hussein comes under the bracket of Sha'air al-Husayniyya, and it has a certain aspect of divinity which is attached to it. So the same mentality is used when it comes to the Alam al-Mubarak of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. This Alam comes under the bracket of Sha'air Husayniyya. Why? Because the idea is that every time you look at this Alam al-Mubarak, I should remember how Abul Fadl al-Abbas on the day of Ashura held this Alam. Despite his right hand being cut, despite his left hand being cut, he held the Alam with his chest. He gave his life, but he did not let the alam of Islam to fall. So every time I look at this alam, I must remember the qadiyya of Imam al-Hussein. And then I say to myself, just the way Mawla Abul Fadl al-Abbas upheld the alam of Islam, even me in my daily life, I need to uphold the alam of Islam through my akhlaq and through my character. Therefore the alam comes under the title of Sha'air al-Husayniyya. A person can tell you, Habibi, this is just a stick with a cloth. How can you say it is important or it has divinity? Baba, it is not the stick or the cloth that makes it important. Just like the way the Kaaba is what? Brick and cement. It is not the brick and cement that makes the Kaaba important. It is what the Kaaba is attached to that makes it important. In the same way we say, if you want to look at the alam as cloth and wood, then this is your own shallow thinking. But when you look at it as being attributed to Abul Fadl Abbas, this is where the divinity comes in. And ba'ad, there doesn't need to be a philosophical debate upon the divinity of the alam. Enter in your lives, ya ikhwan. How many times have you seen that not only Shia, but even non-Shia, leave non-Shia, Shia, non-Muslims have come to the alam of Maulana Abul Fadl al-Abbas and their hajat has been accepted? Yes or no? Have we not seen in our lives? This in itself, these karamat, are sufficient to show us that these are divine symbols that need to be revered and respected for what they represent. So there is an issue which is discussed in the books of Mantiq, which is known as the concept of attribution. The person who comes and tells you, despite all the evidence that is there, that no, to kiss the alam and to kiss the dari is shirk and there is no benefit. They say, why do you have to kiss the alam? Why you have to kiss the dari? Just ask from Imam Hussein, he will give you. Sometimes this objection also comes. We tell to him, Ya Habibi, we are walking in the seerah of Nabi Yaqub. We are walking in the seerah of Nabi Yaqub. Nabi Yaqub, prophet, Nabi from the Anbiya Allah. Nabi Yaqub is Ma'soom or no? Ma'soom. This is a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of the way he was separated from Nabi Yusuf, he cried for years. He cried and cried and cried until he went blind. He lost the eyesight from his eyes. When the news of Nabi Yusuf, when Nabi Yusuf was in Egypt, and the story of his brothers, how they came to him, inshallah, you all know. When Nabi Yusuf, after many years, he meets his brother, he tells them, give my shirt to my father. Perhaps from this he will gain some consolidation. He will gain some consolation rather. What happens? The brothers of Nabi Yusuf go with the shirt of Nabi Yusuf to Nabi Yaqub. What does Nabi Yaqub do? Nabi Yaqub takes a shirt which Yusuf had worn on his body. With the barakah of that shirt, he puts it on his eyes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him his eyesight. So we say to them, why didn't Nabi Yaqub use the wasila of Nabi Yusuf? Why didn't he go and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, Ya Allah, Yusuf is alive, give me my eyes. There is a sunnah. If the shirt of Yusuf can have the power of barakah, then Sayyid al-Shuhada is on a daraja much higher than Nabi Yusuf. For issues like these are central in our Aqidah. If a person comes forward and says they're ritualistic, we need to renew our understanding. We need to review our understanding and help other people to gain the right understanding of the issues of the alam, tabut, jula, and so on and so forth. From amongst the sha'air Husayniyah, you have ma'tam, or what is known in Arabic as latam. The concept of hitting the chest or hitting the face or hitting the head with the hands in Arabic is known as latam. When you return back to the lexicon Lisanul Arab, under the word latam, you will see it says, to paraphrase the definition, ضرب ظاهر الوجه بباطن الكف, with the inside of the hand to hit the outside of the body, whether it is the head, the cheek, the face, whatever it is. And us in Urdu or the subcontinent, instead of the word latam, we use the word matam. Matam also comes under the category of sha'air al-Husayniyah. Many times within our circles, you will find that there are objections raised towards the concept of matam, in that matam as a form of ibadat is not fully understood. Perhaps because of ignorance, or perhaps because of the many Western influences that are creeping in, or many of the deviant thoughts that are creeping into our madhab. So there are many questions that arise. Why should we do matam? What is the significance of the matam? And tonight, inshallah, we wish through our discourse in a very peaceful manner, in a very academic manner, in order to be able to bring our community together under the banner of Imam Hussein, not to cause differences. We wish to address the topic of matam, in that, is matam a part of the religion or no? Is it a part of the sha'air Husayniyah or no? The first objection that comes forward is that a person comes and tells us, or the objection that is put forward, Inta ya Habibi, why do you do matam like this? Who said, did the Imams ever do matam like this? Did you ever read in the life, did you ever read in the biography or in Islamic history anywhere that Imam al-Baqir stood and did matam in a line with two hands? Do you ever find in history, for example, that Imam Hassan al-Askari did saf matam? You will not find this in any books of history, from the beginning, from the Mukhalifin or from the Shia sources. So they come and they tell us, well, the Imams didn't do matam like this, so why are you doing matam like this? This is bid'ah. If the Imams didn't do matam like that, then even you shouldn't do matam in the same way. How do we reply to such an objection? Azizi, the logic, underlying logic behind an argument like this is the following. This is the bottom line that is used. Because a certain action was not performed during the time of the Prophet or the Imam, we should not do it now. This is the underlying argument, correct? Well, if this is the logic that is used, then we say to them, Ya Habibi, stop eating mahamri, stop eating barazi, stop wearing a watch, stop wearing jeans, stop watching TV, don't even drive a work to car. Because all these things were not there during the time of Rasulullah. All these things were not there during the time of the Imam. Enter, will you find in the hadith that the Imam was wearing a pair of Levi's jeans? Enter, do you find in the hadith in Masjid al-Nabawi after Salatul Fajr, Rasulullah used to take the ashab together and they used to have their mandazi and chai over there? Why is that not bid'ah and this is bid'ah? Only the ishkal is put on the matam of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Ya Habibi, this type of istidlal is batil. This is nawasib mentality. This is kharjite mentality. Why? It was the same thinking, the Wahhabis, when the first time the railway line was being constructed in Egypt, the Mufti of Egypt, God knows it was in the late 1800s or early 1900s, he issued a big fatwa saying, ma'shar al-Muslimin, haram for you to ride the trains. Baba, why? Rasulullah never rode the train. So what, we should live in the zaman of the camel? Sure. La, Islam doesn't work like this. Habibi, this type of thinking, this mentality, because a certain action did not exist during the time of the Prophet or did not exist during the time of the Imam, because it didn't exist at that time, we shouldn't do it today. This type of istidlal is batil. Islam has a system. Sharia has a system. Our fiqh has a system. Any given action under the sun can be categorized in one of 5 categories. Either it becomes wajib, either it becomes mustahab, either it is makruh, either it is haram, or it becomes mubah. In order for you to put the category of matam under mustahab, makruh, mubah, wajib, this or that, you need to refer back to the Quran and to the Sunnah, to the ijma of the ulama and the aql, and then from there you are able to extract a hukum shara'i. This mentality, this way of thinking is a fallacy. Just because it didn't exist at the time of the Rasulullah, we shouldn't do it. Now, this type of mentality is batil. This is known as a jawab naqdi, according to the ulama of mantiq, and we used this type of an example a few nights back. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Secondly, who said that matam was not done during the times of the Imam? Who said matam was not done during the times of the Imam? Now we have tons of traditions which show how matam was done in all its intensities during the time of the Imam. Enter the first matam that took place on the plains of Karbala on the Asr after Ashura. Maulana Imam Sahib al-Amri was Zaman describes this in his Ziyarat al-Nahiyah. He describes when the horse of Sayyid al-Shuhada is coming back from the battlefield. What does the Imam say? He says, فَلَمَّا نَذَرْنَا النِّسَاء جَوَادَكَ مَخْزِيًّا وَرَأَيْنَا سَرْجَهُ عَلَيْهِ مَلْوِيًّا فَبَرَزْنَا الْخُدُورِ نَاشِرَاتِ الشُّعُورِ وعلى خدوده اللاتمات ووجوه السافرات وبالأويل دائيات. Maulana Imam Sahib al-Zaman says, when the horse of Imam al-Hussein is coming back without a rider, The women look at the horse, the Zuljana, the way we say it, and the saddle is dismounted and is covered with blood. They see that the Imam went with the horse, but now the horse is coming back without the Imam. Imam Sahib al-Am tells us that the women came running out of the tents. وَعَلَى الْخُدُودِ لَاتِمَاتٍ. Imam Sahib al-Amr says the women of Bani Hashim came out slapping their cheeks. Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen, do you know what this means? Zainab al-Kubra and Sayyidah Rababa beating their faces. وَبِلَ أُوَيْلِ دَاعِيَاتٍ, shouting, wa wayla, wa wayla. Imam Sahib al-Amr talks about the martyrdom of the women of Bani Hashim. Do you find the Imam condemning them for performing martyrdom? They beat their cheeks. If to beat the cheek and to beat the head is permissible, then it becomes tariq al-awlad to beat the chest is permissible, because to slap the face is more painful than to slap the chest. You don't find the Imam condemning them, rather you find the Imam praising them. This becomes a sort of his musibah. And this happened under the watch of Imam Zainul Abidin. During his life, do you find any text in any history, an open challenge to anybody who is an historian? Come and bring for us one hadith that Imam Sajjad refused the women to do matam like this. Tons of times, from Karbala to Kufa, Kufa to Sham, from Sham back to Medina, you will find these same words. Ala khududihinna latimat, or latimati khududihinna. Another one, wadarabna sudurahunna. They would beat their chests and they would beat their cheeks. You will never find one time a hadith where the Imam tells them not to do this action. Those of you who have studied usulul fiqh, principles of jurisprudence, you know that takreerul imam hujjah. When the Imam is silent over a certain action, this is an indication of his tacit approval. This in itself is a hujjah. Hi, number one. Number two, is there anything more explicit than this? There is something even more explicit than this. You refer back to the book of Tahdhibul Ahkam. At-Tahdhib is a book which is authored by Allama Sheikh At-Tusi. One of the most important, one of the most significant books in the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, such that a faqih cannot become a faqih unless he studies istibsar. A marja taqlid does not become a marja taqlid until he studies the book of istibsar. Within the book of istibsar, a book which is used for istidlal of a hukum shar'i, you find that there is a hadith by Mawlana Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, where he is describing the azab and describing the emotions of the women of the Ahlul Bayt. He says, وَشَكَكْنَ جُيُوبَهُنَّ وَلَتَمْنَ خُدُودَهُنَّ. He's describing the azab, the expression of grief of the women of Bani Hashim, including Sayyidah Rabab, and Sayyidah Layla, and Sayyidah al-Banin, and Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra, and Kulthum, and Sayyidah Sukayna. What does he say? وَشَكَكْنَ جُيُوبَهُنَّ. Out of grief, they tore the outer garments. They tore their outer garment. You know the hijab of the Bani Hashim was the hijab of Sayyidah Zahra. When you look into the khutbah of Sayyidah Zahra and you see how Mawlati Zahra came into the haram or into Masjid al-Nabawi, their hijab used to be hijab of 7 layers. The most outer layer, they would tear the seam out of grief. Shakakna yujuyubahunna walatamna khududahunna, or latamna wujuhahunna. They would beat their faces out of grief. Who is saying this? Imam Sadiq. Does Imam Sadiq approve this or no? Look at the style of the hadith. Look at the way the Imam talks. Number one, he describes the azar of the women of the Ahlul Bayt. After he has described the azar of the women, now there is ta'liq. Now the Imam puts a hukum, either endorsing this way of aza or not endorsing? What does the Imam say? The Imam goes on to say, to begin the narration from the beginning, وَشَكَكْنَ جُيُوبَهُنَّ وَضَرَبْنَ خُدُودَهُنَّ عَلَى الْحُسَيْنِ بْنِ عَلِي. Narration, what the women or how the women used to perform their aza. Now the Imam gives his hukum. He goes on to say, وَعَلَى مِثْلِهِ وَعَلَى مِثْلِهِ تُلْتَمَ الْخُدُودُ وَتَشُكُّ الْجُيُوبِ. Imam Sadiq says, and it is on the likes of Imam al-Hussein that the faces should be beat and that the shirts should be ripped. Command from Imam, if there is going to be any occasion on your life where you're going to beat your cheek, or beat your head, or beat your chest, then it is on the likes of Sayyid al-Shuhada that you should beat your cheek. Hukum from the Imam, endorsement of the Imam to perform matam. Can there be anything more explicit than this? Yet a person will come and tell you, okay, the Imam said do, okay, the Imam approved the azah of the women of Ahlul Bayt. But why didn't the Imams do matam by themselves in their history? Baba, have you read into the history of Ahlul Bayt and seen how madloom they were? When were our Imams given freedom to perform matam? Tell me. When were our Imams given the freedom to perform matam? Once Imam al-Baqir salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi holds a majlis azah in his house. He calls a poet to recite the gham or to recite the musibah of Ahlul Bayt. The traditions tell us that because they began to cry in the house, the voice of the weeping was so loud, the police of Bani Umayyah came into the house of Imam al-Baqir, disrupt the majlis azah. They ask him, why are you weeping? Why are you wailing? Why have you people all gathered over here? Imam al-Baqir out of taqiyya tells them that there is a child who has died in our house. There is a baby that has died. Taban, the Imam is not lying, even though it is a mawqif or a position of taqiyya. But Imam is talking about Aliyun al-Askar or Abdullah al-Radi. When the Imams did not even have freedom to cry in their houses, how do you expect them to have freedom to do matam? The history, Shia history. When have the Shias and the lovers of Ali Muhammad ever had freedom to conduct their affairs like this? The moment that they got freedom to perform azah or to perform matam in a communal manner, in a synchronized manner that we do now, was during the time of Allama al-Majlisi rahmatullah alayh, during the Buyid dynasty, because the Buyid emperor was more empathetic, were more sympathetic towards the madhab of Ahlul Bayt. The first chance our ulama got to bring the azah of Imam al-Hussein at a massive, full-scale level, they took it. Allama al-Majlisi being the first one. And from him you see that this tradition of performing matam together in a synchronized way with one khatib or one reciter reciting a nawha or a poem at the front continued in its traditions, began by Allama al-Majlisi during the time of Sheikh Murtada al-Ansari in Najaf al-Ashraf. He supported and encouraged them. Agha Akhund, one of the greatest scholars to live and whose books are still studied till now in the Hawza Ilmiya, supported communal mourning. Up till the time of Ayatollah al-Naini, rahmatullah alayhi, who established the Hawza Ilmiya in Kum al-Muqaddas. But is there anything more? There can be no greater proof of your Imam participating in the azan other than the incident of Allama al-Marhum Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum. Brothers, it seems like I'm going to go 10 minutes over my discourse today. If you don't mind, out of the barakah, please bear with me if I'm 10 minutes over. From tomorrow, inshallah, I promise the majlis will end 40 minutes on the dot. Tonight being a weekend night, and because this is something central to our aqidah, from the kindness of your heart, if you give me these extra 10 minutes and give the Samahat al-Sayyid extra moments in his speech, this will be a great honor and this will be a great service towards clearing the misconceptions that lie within our circles. With a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Barakallah feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all your hajat, insha'Allah. Allama As-Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum, one of the greatest Maraja al-Taqleed to have lived in this century. And I have narrated this incident a number of times, but I narrate it again over here to show you the importance. As was the tradition of the ulama and the Maraja of their time, Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum would stand at the gates of Karbala on every Ashura. He would watch the mawqibs of Aza coming into Karbala and going into the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and from the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada to the haram of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Each year he would stand on the day of Ashura at the bridge or at the gate, together with all his close companions, his children, all the other shuyukh of the Hawza, those who usually sit, you can say, from the Ahlul Khibra around the Marja Taqleed. Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum is standing there with much grief. He's watching the mawqibs of Aza coming in. They're coming in throwing sand on their faces. They're coming, some beating their chests, some of them using chains, some of them hitting their faces. Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum is watching them, all of them coming into Karbala shouting, Ya Hussein, Wa Husseina, Wa Husseina. All of a sudden, the way we say in Gujarati, na wat na bol, nothing happening. Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum is standing there watching. All of a sudden, without saying anything, without any signal, nothing whatsoever, suddenly, this is a Marja Taqleed, Ayatollah Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum takes his amama, throws it on the ground. He rips open the front buttons of his dishdasha. He runs down the steps of the bridge, starts running with the people who are performing Azah, hitting his head, Wa Husseina, until he got to the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada. He reaches the dari of Imam al-Hussein. He falls down, he becomes unconscious. All the shuyukh who are over there in the house come running towards him. They come, they put water on his face, they put his head on his lap. They say to him, Sayyidina, what happened? Enter your Marja Taqleed. What happens if the people see you acting like this? It's not munasib for you to act like this. Do you know what Ayatollah Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum said to them? He said, how can I not throw my amama? How can I not beat my own head when I saw Mawlana Sahib al-Amr running in the Azawi Mikfar Hussein? Zaman is running in these Azah. How are we not to perform the matam? This narration is mentioned in his history, in his biography. But what is the philosophy of matam? And when you stand together in your lines, this is not an action purely out of grief. This is an action which has deep connotations on your aqidah. Enter when you stand in your lines and you form your matam. Every time you hit your chest, your mentality should be that, Ya Imam, I'm hitting my chest wishing, I wish that spear that went into the chest of Ali al-Akbar would come into my chest. I wish that sword that hit your chest would have hit my chest. I want to feel the same pain that my Mawla felt. We cannot even feel 1% of the pain that the companions of Sayyid al-Shuhada and Sayyid al-Shuhada went through. The least I can do is this matter. But this is a statement of wilaya. When you stand and you do your matam, you are giving bay'ah to your 12th Imam. You are hitting your chest as if to say, Mawlana Sahib al-Amr, even if I feel pain on my body, I am willing to give my life for you. This is what matam symbolizes. This isn't what matam expresses. Expression of wala, expression of ishq, expression of mahabba. And ba'd, ahibba'i, don't stop at the matam. Use this matam to increase your ibadat. Use this matam to increase your ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Enter when you come here and for long hours you perform your matam and you perform saf. When you go home and you wake up in the morning for Fajr, your body is aching. You've performed saf, your back is aching. You've performed this matam, your chest is paining. When you are experiencing this pain and you stand up to do your Fajr and you say Allahu Akbar, when you go down into ruku and your back pains because of all the matam, remember the salat of Sayyidah Zainab. Remember the salat of Sayyidah Zainab. Into your back pains because of doing saf. Remember how Sayyidah Zainab did her ruku and how it pained when they hit her with whips. Habibi, matam is supposed to make you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Matam is supposed to increase your spirituality. Together with your matam, if you decide to stand in the lines and beat your chest, you have decided to take the responsibility of being a matami. If you are a matami, also make sure that your namaz is the top of namaz. Because you are a matami of Imam al-Hussein, let your salat be perfect. Because you are in the Nawha Khan of Imam al-Hussein, let your Quran also be perfect. Let it not be that because I'm a matami, I did matam, now I shouldn't recite Salatul Jama'ah. La, it becomes awla on you. Because you are a matami of Hussein, because you are an azadar of Imam al-Hussein, you will be the first in the line of Salatul Jama'ah. To be a matami is a responsibility. The dunya is changing, brothers and sisters. If you are a matami, tomorrow you go and do any sin, you perform anything haram, people will not say Fulan did haram. They will say these are the matamis who are doing haram. Don't bring the stain on Imam al-Hussein. Inshallah, all of you, qulubukum tayyiba, your hearts are pure and you're from the mu'mineen. This establishment of matam that you have, this establishment of azar that you have, keep it strong. And you see the barakah that comes to you in the dunya and in the akhirah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Ahibai, tonight we are gathered over here to commemorate the istishhad of the two children, shining lights, stars of Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra. And before we mention their dhikr, I want to bring your minds back to the time after Dhuhr on the day of Ashura. It is now the time of Dhuhr. After Dhuhr on the day of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein, around him all his companions lie on the battlefield. This one's head has been cut. This one's chest has been ripped open by a spear. This one has been filled with arrows. Nobody remains from the Ansar of Sayyid al-Shuhada except 18 men from the Bani Hashim, his family members. No one remained except from his sons and his brothers, his cousins and his nephews, the children of Sayyidah Zainab and the children of Muslim bin Aqil. The traditions tell us that when nobody remained, all these young children came and they surrounded Imam Hussein. They removed their swords from their sheath, each one of them asking permission to go into the battlefield. Imam Hussein would look at them with tears rolling down his eyes. He would look at their innocent faces. These are young children. Ajib, what time has come upon Sayyid al-Shuhada? What time has come on the son of Fatima that he has to choose which nephew will be killed first and which nephew will be killed second. Allah, tonight before we do the dhikr of honor Muhammad, I want to do for you the dhikr of Abdullah ibn Muslim and Aqil. The traditions tell us that the first child, the first son from Bani Hashim who was martyred, his name was Abdullah. He was the son of who? Muslim bin Aqil. He came to Imam al-Hussein. He said to him, before anybody is martyred, I want to go out. He says, Uncle Hussein, I want to go and meet my father, Muslim bin Aqil in Jannah. Give me permission. Sayyid al-Shuhada, the Baqtar tells us, gave him permission. Abdullah ibn Muslim bin Aqil, from what it transpires from the hadith, Shab, he was a youth, perhaps at the age of 18 or 19. He comes onto his horse, he brandishes his sword, he goes into the Maidan reciting, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, wa lillah, wa fi sabilillah, wa ala millati rasulillah. He goes into the battlefield. The traditions tell us that Abdullah was just like his father Muslim bin Aqil, Faris Shuj'a, a horseman who was absolutely brave. He killed 98 people from the kuffar until one time a la'in came. The tradition tells us that he shot an arrow from a very close distance towards Abdullah. When Abdullah saw the arrow coming in his direction, the arrow was shot to his face. The tradition tells us he put his hand to protect his face from the arrow, but the way the arrow was shot, it pierced his hand, and the hand of Abdullah got stuck into his forehead. Allah, Allah! Abdullah ibn Muslim bin Aqil fell to the ground. The narration tells us that another one of the La'in came and he shot an arrow that pierced the hand of Abdullah. Oh, musibata! When he fell down, the children of Sayyidah Zainab came. Sayyidah Zainab said to them, "On and Muhammad." She said to them, "On and Muhammad, I do not wish for anyone from Bani Hashim to be killed. These are my last words of a Maktal Ba'ad Antum. Allah, Allah." The narration tells us, Sayyidah Zainab took On and she took Muhammad. She sat them in the chest and she said to them one statement. She said to them one statement, she said, "Oh Muhammad, I want you to go into the battlefield and I don't want you to come back alive, because if you come back alive, what will I tell Zahra on the day of judgment?" لله وإنا إليه راجعون ولعنة الله على قوم الظالمين. أعظم الله لك الأجر يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان.